Hey everybody, Ethan here, and you're on my side of the room. Today I want to talk about a piece of borrowed gear. This past Sunday I was doing my church thing, and Guilherme, the guitarist, is from Brazil. And I say this because sometimes there's language barrier issues between the two of us. I mean, he's a cool guy and everything, and he's reasonably fluent in English, but runs up against some brick walls there. Better at English than I am in Portuguese, certainly. So after further ado, what he was trying to tell me after we were done with the service was he wanted me to borrow this and basically kind of like figure out how it worked for him. Not quite sure why. He said he wanted to use it for recording, but the problem is when I took this home and plugged it in, somebody did. I don't know if he did it. I don't know if one of his sons did. But there's definitely guitar playing on this thing. So what is it and what do we know about it? Well, what we know is that it's a piece of Boss gear is what it is. I don't know when this is from, but it's the Boss BR-800, and it's a, I guess we'll say 6-track recorder. This is a really weird piece of equipment in that if you're savvy, you're probably looking at this and saying, hey, don't you basically have this thing? And yes, I do. I've got a TASCAM 8-track digital. And it's so funny how this dates back a ways, and this is newer. And so this is very much like the mini-me of this, but this is also the radical improvement over this. So let's stay focused on this. And so one thing that's different about this is it has built-in effects above and beyond what the TASCAM has, but it uses a lot of the same kind of business here. Like it's got the jog wheel, they've got SD card on the side here somewhere. This has more inputs, but it's deceptive. And I'll get into that in a minute as well. It's got built-in mics, so does this. But again, with this, you've got fewer inputs. Somewhere in this mess, you've got the SD card action going on. This is a 5-volt power input. This is 9. So if you're savvy, again, a 9-volt power input DC is a guitar pedal. So one of the other things Guilherme said he was going to do with this thing is basically treat it like a DI box at the church because of the built-in effects. Somewhere here they are. His amp is a mess. And so he was like, well, maybe I'll plug into this and then use the guitar effects. So I'll have basically a DI box for the PA, and then at least I'll have some effects to it. Okay. In some ways, I think he would just be better served with a better amp. Really. But let's focus on what this thing actually does. So what grabbed me about it when I plugged it in and started messing around with it is it really got me recording pretty much right away. I'm not going to plug it in and go into all this. This is not the YouTube channel for this level of detail, and there's other people on YouTube, and if you search for Boss BR-800, you'll find them who have done massively in-depth things, and I've looked at those videos, which help me out with understanding like what this thing can kind of do. But there's also stuff it can't do, and makes me not want to buy one because I basically already have it in the form of this, but this is better than this. But again, what was so inspiring about this is that it has a built-in drum machine. Now, this does not have drum pads that you can do this kind of stuff with, but you could plug this into the computer through the USB, and you could edit the drum patterns if you want to. But then it begs the question, I've got this. It's got drum pads and stuff like that. So, yes, we're looking at two pieces of gear that more or less exist here, but it's kind of apples and oranges. So, how so? Because these are preset patterns that, again, you could use the computer to edit, but at that point, if you're going to mess around with that, then you probably should just have a drum machine. Not necessarily this one. Me and this go back a ways. This is my second stab at having a SR16. But buying it again, it's basically like somehow getting a time machine and going back and get one piece of gear from my past, and here it is. I mean, I can't imagine anything is different from this now than it was then. And it's not like it's some kind of like different MIDI jacks or something. It's the same stuff. Well, with the drum machine, you can program, you can do different sounds and stuff, and this is much more of a scratch pad. So, but that's what got me recording right away, is that I heard some stuff on here. I'm like, yeah, all right, I can play along with that. And it sounds like something like there was a drum beat that sounded like a song I wrote. I'm like, yeah, all right, sure, I'm going to go with that. And the more I futzed with it, I'm like, it's okay. It's not quite the drum beat that I need. And I also need a little bit of customization because of certain breaks in the song. So then we're back to this. Well, I used GarageBand to tap out, using the grid, what the beat was, because it had been so long since I futzed with that. Then I went into step mode in this. Then I tapped it all in with my little chart I made on an index card. And then I actually used these drums to record into this. Well, that kind of defeats the purpose of this unit, because one of the channels that you get kind of for free is the drums. Whereas on one of their stereo channels, this is why I say it's a 6-track, because these are the tracks you actually can kind of do things with. Let me get it in frame. And then you've got your rhythm track that may or may not have anything to do with anything. So the song I recorded on this to give back to Guilherme so he can play around with it if he wants. There is no rhythm track, because everything all has been recorded into here, and I left him on open track for his guitar. So next event, 6-track recording, you say, huh? Because 2 of these tracks are stereo, which, fine. The drums would have been stereo anyway on, let me just keep playing juggle equipment. Tracks 1 and 2 on this are typically my drums. Am I holding this right? Yes. So tracks 1 and 2 are typically my drums, so there went 2 of my 8 channels right away. But what TASCAM's really good about is bouncing. So if I absolutely positively had to, I could bounce things down to a single track where I could have, like, say, 4 things of tracks and bring it down to 1. Well, guess who doesn't have that option? This guy. No bouncing. Because they don't really think that you're doing that with this. They think you're just somewhere, your studio space or your bedroom or out and out of town, because this is battery operated possibly. And you're just like, let's jam around and come up with some ideas, or here's a song we're working on, or I'm not done with this yet, or whatever. And you need something to stick it in, and so this is your scratch pad to do that with. So bouncing tracks really isn't a thing. Boss intended you, and by boss I mean Roland, intended you to kind of treat this like the Momix. So the Momix has several inputs. Now this doesn't color the sound really, it's just an input. I've said this over and over and over, and I'll keep saying it over and over and over. I'll also say this isn't sponsored, but I mean, sponsored by who? Garage sales? Pawn shops? But anyway, this is where I say this is deceptive. So check these XLRs. Ooh, ah. All right, there's 4 of them. If you go into the input select on this, you can do 1 and 2, and they mean it. Like you've got to be plugged into 1 and 2 to get the stereo recording. Otherwise, it's just going to be mono on the 1, and there's nothing you can do to apparently change that except go into both of these or go into 4. 4 is supposed to have phantom power. No, it doesn't. If it does, either there's a missing switch somewhere hidden in this thing that activates it and it's not obvious, and therefore there's no phantom. Did I just find it? No. Oh, what's going on with that? Well, anyway, whereas this has phantom. In fact, it has phantom so easily, it's one of the buttons right here to do it. And right over my shoulder is my often neglected condenser mic that needs phantom power. So it ain't happening with this. And all I got out of this business was static. Well, I did scratch vocal to get the timing down of the instrumentation because I was actually, believe it or not, playing the keyboard and playing the bass and stuff. And because of that, I was so focused on what I was doing, I needed to know where these breaks were and stuff. So I had to do the scratch vocal to play along too. But when I wanted to actually do real vocal, I had to go get my other neglected Carvin mic that sits in the corner over there and plug into input 4. Well, isn't input 4 supposed to be phantom power? Well, it's supposed to be, and yet apparently that's the way to get mono stereo vocal, which went into the split stereo track. I just figured if I was going to make something a stereo track that wasn't the drums, I guess it would be my voice. Why not? But panning and stuff is all strictly through the menu. So it's very fiddly in that way. Whereas, once again, the TASCAM, you've got a lot of stuff like ready at hand, like you can do panning and stuff like right from this. So again, major difference. Well, so this is input 3. Why aren't we talking about this? Stereo here, mono here, meaning if you don't want to take up 2 inputs and then be forced to have to select 2 tracks to record onto. And cheating with these guys with these inputs won't work. So if you want to pull this and do this split thing, you've got to use input 4. Why not input 3? Well, I'll tell you. The only other setting is to say all 4 inputs. Because they think that you're miking a drum set maybe, or you're, again, having a jam session with your buddies and you all like, you get a mic, you get a mic, you get a mic. And what it's going to do is it's going to actually spread and stereo record across the whole thing. So these are some issues. With the TASCAM, it's 2 tracks at a time. So this is not record all your buddies, or if you do, you'll go into your 2 mic things and go into your 2 tracks, and that's what you're doing. So this is much more with the intent of deliberately sitting in a studio environment and multi-tracking. This is more, again, ad hoc. So I think there's a place for that. For me personally, it doesn't justify buy this. There was like a 2-minute window that opened up where I was like,
well, maybe I can see if he'll sell it to me.
And then the more I got into it, it's like, no, you can keep it. I don't need this. I mean, Jamie will be relieved, but like it matters. But either way, it's like, I'm glad I just kind of like let the wave of gear lust wash over me. But then the more I took a critical look at this, I couldn't justify it. But I am grateful to it, though, for getting me into recording again, because I just hadn't been doing it for a long time. And so it was good to actually program and arrange and things like this. And I'm not even really, I just did like a stripped down version of the song just to kind of get Guilherme into the feel of what the song is like. And then later on, I want him to actually come over and record the real guitar part on my equipment for my use. Ta-da, see? So in that way, again, this is kind of useful that, okay, he can take this home back to his place and then at least have what I gave him as a reference to mess with and get accustomed to. All right, so one other quick thing. And speaking of not sponsored and all that, but I've been absolutely binging the stuffing out of the channel. But it's not, the channel isn't called Bad Gear, but the series is. And you may, if you get around on YouTube and watch different, especially gear videos for different kinds of things, this is synthy, drum machine-y kind of stuff. What caught my eye is that one day in my feeds it said, you know, the Alesis was in the Bad Gear treatment. And I really thought, because I hadn't seen the channel before, I thought it was just clickbaity nonsense of just like a bunch of pot shots being taken at the Alesis, and it really isn't. It's a very well done series, and I enjoy it immensely. And I'm not a synthy kind of guy. This is just a songwriting tool for me. I'm not a synthesist, as it were. But his reviews are fun and funny, and I love the memes and everything. So with the SR16, he said, yeah, this hasn't evolved at all. And he's right, it hasn't. And I can tell you it hasn't because I used to have it back in the day when this was like a new piece of gear. And it's still around, but Alesis didn't really feel the need to do anything new to it. Well, times have changed. And as he was pointing out, one of the things that has come around now is the idea of retro wave, where people deliberately want to sound 80s sounding without flat out covering stuff from the 80s, as an example. Not to say nobody ever covers stuff from the 80s. But still, I mean, there's a genre, and it's true. Like there's the channel New Retro Wave. I think is famously the one that comes to mind and is always in my feed all the damn time. Where he was saying that, yeah, if you want to produce that kind of genre of music, you kind of need the SR16 to provide it, to provide those authentic drum sounds from the 80s. And truly, there's so much other gear that dates back those days that can do that, but there's also trade-offs, as his series will point out. Well, why do I even bring all this stuff up? Well, gear lust is a thing. And I just talked about it being a thing with this thing. So he's always showing all this apparatus, and it's amusing and entertaining to watch, but a lot of it, it's like, I'm not a synth player. I don't look to have a big rack-mounted crazy setup behind me of all this synth gear. It's gotten me thinking new ways about, if I did change things up behind me as far as the kinds of things I use, what kinds of things to be looking at for later. So the thing about it is, so Silence of the Lambs told us famously, we covet the things we see every day. And this is true, because when you have a steady diet of something like Bad Gear, and then you see the gear that he's constantly using to pair the Bad Gear with, yeah, you start to make the connections about, all right, so he never trashes things. At least I haven't seen any episodes where he's flat out trashed things. He always tries to find some kind of upside or some kind of use for things, and it'd be like, well, even if it isn't my personal cup of tea, this is the kinds of things that you probably could use this for. Well, he'll pair up different devices, and I went out looking at prices of these sorts of things. Like, I can't justify half of this stuff, if not all. So that's all nice. But we have kind of a saying around here at home that we watch a lot of influencers, and we are under the influence of influencers. So Vivian Tries, we've got stuff here because of her. Deal Guy, we've got stuff here because of him. Sam the Cooking Guy, we've got his cookbook. Babish, we've got his knife and his bowl set. Sorted, we got their cookbooks. And we got some other stuff that they've promoted in some kind of way, shape, or form. So I thought, with all this gear that Bad Gear is plugging, and, well, not plugging, but using and looking at and reviewing and futzing with, one piece of gear caught my eye. And I thought, okay, what's a way that I can bring the Bad Gear home game here as an homage to how much binging I've spent watching his channel. So here's an example of one of the episodes I was just watching. So look at all this gear. Look at all this gear that he's got here. And I paused the video just so I'm not totally wholesale ripping off his channel. Yeah, look at, what about that? Yeah, over here. Yeah, look at that stuff. But no, it's not the kind of thing you think of. Yeah, that's right. It's this. I noticed he had a Rowan delay. And what really aggravates me is that ever since this ended up on my Amazon cart and on the way here, every single episode I watched, he never uses this ever again. And I wanted to know what settings he set it for. So in his style, I want to know what settings he used. No sooner do I rip open the packaging than I punch up one of his videos and it's back. So I can tell you right now, I've got it set for his official settings, at least in the video that I have paused for that screen grab. So fun to mess with. It was $30, but compared to some of this stuff that could be thousands of dollars, I thought, a $30 little homage. We've done that with other stuff around here. Vivian, Deal Guy, Sorted, Babish, Hollow Taco. I mean, come on. So, I mean, sure. Jimmy's like another pedal, I'm sure, but yeah. But anyway, what about this pedal? Well, that's a story for another time. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. Keep learning, keep playing, and I'll catch you in the next video. Oh, I almost forgot to mention one thing that blew my mind about Guilherme having the BR-800. He's got the box. Dang.